guess Palsteron here, and today let's talk about how to level a ranger slash Deadeye. In specifics, if you want to respec to crossbows as well, I will give some instructions to that, for example, for the explosive shot build that I just put out a day ago. But just to be clear, this is a tried and true method. Now, obviously, there's a lot of leveling guides out there. All of them kinda lead to Rome. And just to be clear, Ranger is extremely nice to level with. So even if you make a few mistakes, overall, it should be a very safe experience. At least for me, Ranger was by far the easiest leveling experience, and I've rerolled quite a bit. On top of just basic leveling, I'll also talk about leveling items that you can buy. Maybe this isn't your first character and you want to make your leveling a lot easier, and I mean a lot. If you just invest like a few exalts, you can, I don't know, strip a lot of hours from how long it would usually take. So we'll give some examples there, and I will talk about the crossbow transition, especially how to get a good weapon. Now, at first I wanted to write my own guide, but I realized that Coffee Beans, fellow Maxroll creator, has already made one, and it is basically exactly what I would have done. In fact, I actually reviewed this guide as well, so here we are. In this video, I'll go in detail over everything you need to know, give my own spin on a few things, own experiences, etc. But if you just want to read this, I'll link it down in the description, and you don't even have to watch the video if you want to, or you can just, I don't know, listen to it and then have this on your second monitor while you're leveling. Now, your first leveling setup is pretty straightforward. It's going to be Lightning Arrow and Lightning Rod. Both of these are right up top here. They are very synergistic. They're level 1 skills. They're no-brainers. They are incredible. And this is how it looks like. You put down these lightning rods. I put down 3 at a time because I have a scatter shot support, so it makes it faster to apply them. And then if you hit an enemy with Lightning Arrow, and it was right there, all of these would chain to that enemy. So it's basically a single target ability. Although while you're in packs, you can also do stuff like throw down one of these and then usually Lightning Arrow, right? You don't have to go too crazy, but do remember that if the boss is kind of like doing his old shtick, right? He's like talking smack or whatever, you can put down lightning rods in the meantime, and whenever he spawns, he's gonna be in for a treatment. Now, the rest of the skills are not as important, but you can also put down a flame wall to get extra damage whenever you're shooting through it. You have escape shot to kind of get out of nifty situations, and you have Herald of Thunder once you get your first 30 spirit. It is an incredible boost to clear speed. So that's kind of it. As for support gems, on the Lightning Arrow, you'll be using Martial Tempo. It will drain your mana a little bit more, but it's just so comfy, especially against bosses. It's just way more responsive. And then on top of that, you have Lightning Infusion for extra damage. Do note that if you have, I don't know, cold or fire damage on your bow, you might want to replace this with something like Lightning Pen. Or if it's your first character, then you probably don't have any other choice because Lightning Penetration is too high level. So you should just go with Lightning Infusion and try to keep your cold and fire damage to a minimum. As for Lightning Rod, you want to support it with Scatter Shot for extra projectiles and then Magnified Effect. Now, you actually don't want Concentrated Effect, which gives you more damage and less AoE because your overlaps will be worse. Now, this is something you can test out. Personally, I also prefer Magnified Effect. Now, if you go step by step here, you will also see that there is a Stormcaller arrow added for huge shocks. You can support this with Concentrated Effect and Lasting Shock for a lot of single target damage. And then you can also get something like Freezing Salvo, which helps you quite a bit with freezing bosses. And you just kind of go there, right? You unlock Electrocuting Arrow. You kind of see the theme, lightning based. All of them are pretty good. But then we get into Gas Arrow. Now, when I ask 10 people, 5 people will tell me they prefer Lightning Arrow, 5 people will tell me they prefer Gas Arrow. So if you really like the lightning theme and you kind of want to wing it, that is fine. It is very strong. It's in fact one of the strongest bow builds right now. You can even take it all the way to endgame. Forget about crossbows, right? There's a lot of good guides out there. But Gas Arrow swap, for me personally, also has been quite superior. You can transition to this at level 22 because it's a level 7 gem. That is why we're doing something else in the meantime. Now, if you look at Gas Arrow, you might think, or might be mistaken, this is like a poison skill or something, and it is, but we're using it for something else. See, if you ignite this poison cloud, it will actually go pretty haywire right here with a fire explosion. I'm pressing Alt right now. Okay, there you go. Quite a bit of damage, and these can overlap. You can also pre-fire them against bosses, and I think the video here even shows it, but I'm going to show you as well in a second. And you already have that flame wall from earlier. That is how you're going to be igniting these poison clouds for explosions. Now, okay, I've Gas Arrow with Scatter Shot for additional projectiles, and this is basically how it's going to look like. You see these projectiles, once they explode on the ground, you can see that there's like a poison cloud, and you can flame these, right? So let's just real quickly make a flame wall to show you. This is what's going to happen. You have flame wall with Spell Cascade and with Fortress. And what that does is, let's put it on right click. it's going to make these circles, and it's going to make 3 of them. That's what those 2 support gems do. And what that basically means is it just gives you more leeway to kind of shoot wherever you want, and it just ignites. Because when that flame wall touches an enemy with the gas cloud out, it's going to explode. So basically, this is going to be the way you're going to map. You're going to shoot, and then you're going to flame wall, shoot, flame wall, and so on. It is quite a lot of damage. Plus, against bosses, what you really want to do is, once again, pre-throw. Pre-throw, and just wait until he comes up, and then do the flame wall for a huge explosion. Now, do note that later there is an interaction with Tornado Shot, or at least used to be, that is quite strong, but you can split those. But I'm not going to talk about this because apparently it's going to get fixed in one of the next patches. It's also only at level 41, if I remember. Yeah, 41. So at that point, you're probably already respecing into crossbows or whatever else you want to do. In terms of the setup that you want to use here, you want to use gas arrow with scatter shot, and then also fire infusion. Do remember, all your damage is fire. All this explosion is 100% converted to fire. I know it's confusing because it's called gas arrow, but that is what it is. Think about it as a flame wall igniting the gas arrow into flames. Poison damage is completely worthless. And your scaling is very, very similar to lightning arrow. We're going to talk about that on the passive tree, which means you don't really have to do any massive respecs. Flame wall, once again, is supported with spell cascade and fortress. This gives it kind of like the round look, and also 3 of them. Then we have still Stormcaller's arrow, freezing salvo, shield charge you can use on offhand, but in that case, you would have to know what weapon swapping is. So it's not 100% needed, but if you know, you know. You're also going to use Herald of Ash now instead of Herald of Thunder. Now, if you don't have a second Spirit Gem, you can't really swap. You're just going to stick with Herald of Thunder. It's not great for now, but it is, I guess, better than nothing. You're not really shocking all that much. But once you get a Spirit Gem, go to Herald of Ash. However, don't throw it away. Do remember that most endgame builds actually use multiple Heralds right now, so that is quite strong. So you're going to find a Jeweler's Orb in Act 3 from one of the camps, and there you're going to use Inspiration. Now, this is a little bit of an interesting one. I personally didn't have mana problems, but if you do, use Inspiration, 40% less cost. In general, I've been fine with just mana flasking away, right? But if you're not, then you can definitely go for that, and otherwise replace it with a damage support. But yeah, otherwise not much changes, and basically Stormcaller arrow, you can put overcharge on top of everything. This is all included in the guide, but yeah, this is kind of where it ends, and this is where you're going to be at level 60, 45, whatever you want to respec to, whenever you want to respec into. In terms of passive tree, let's just start with the Ascension. You're going to probably ascend once, maybe twice. You want Gathering Winds first. Tailwinds is incredible. It's movement speed, attack speed. It's a feel-good ascendancy. It gives you evasion. All the above. It's one of the strongest ascendancy points currently in the game. As a second option, you probably want to go point blank. Now, there is people who like to go Windward, but usually I don't think it's necessary. Now, point blank is better because it just has more leeway in terms of distance, and most monsters are going to jump on you, so they're going to be in your face anyways. All right, let's talk about the passive tree. This is the most important step, and where the most mistakes happen when it comes to leveling. You need to understand that damage is king. And no, I'm not just saying that because I'm on softcore. I'm saying that because I see a lot of people go left side, take stuff like evasion or movement speed because it sounds good, and it does, sure. But if you don't do damage, you're going to run out of life flasks against bosses. You can't really do anything. Like, if you're defensive, you're just going to sit there, and it takes twice as long, and you're gonna die anyways. That is kind of the thing at the start. Obviously, that completely shifts towards later in maps, and we're gonna go over that. But early on, increased damage is incredible. Basically, the first 10% increased damage is just straight up 10% more damage, right? And so on. So while these nodes get worse, the more you take them, they are just so goddamn premium. So you go all of these. Clean shot, vile wounds, right? After that, you want to go to the left side, though, because Blur is incredible. 4% movement speed, dex, evasion. Attributes, at least at the start, are pretty hard to do. And in between, you have Combat Alchemy, which helps you a lot with Mana Flask uptime. Now, guess what we're going to get next? More increased damage. All the way down here. Now, when it comes to attributes, important to know, you can change this at any point at the hooded one, and you can just, for even half the cost, you can change dexterity into int, into strength. This will always fluctuate, so don't be hesitant to change it around as you go, and always check if your gems are actually working. That is just what it is. You go harness the elements, increase type damage for each type of elemental ailment. That's usually around about 15 to 30% increased damage, and here you also have a little bit of chance to shock. After that, you will go straight into escape velocity. Usually defense is not that big because your base types are all over the place. You need resistances, you need life, right? You can't just only pick evasion bases. But this one also gives 3% movement speed, which is quite premium, so it's just a very efficient node. And after that, we're going to continue with increased damage right here. And then we go down here to Maiming Strike, the small node. Also has 2% movement speed. Now, after that, you want to go down. If you don't have a jewel yet, that's fine. You can buy one with like elemental damage, projectile damage, attack speed, whatever you want. Maybe you found a random one, just chug it in. Otherwise, leave it open for later. Can be quite strong, especially if you have some exalts from last characters, but whatever. Acceleration, increased attack speed, movement speed, just all around really good. And roundabout at this point, you will have swapped from lightning arrow into gas arrow or not. It doesn't really matter. Both have quite the same scaling. There's nothing really that only works for lightning or only works for fire. It's kind of set up in a way where you can do whatever the hell you want, kind of. Okay, so after that, we move on. To the left, we grab Exploit, and now we're kind of setting up for our bow cluster next. Now, this could be first, this could be first. It really depends. If you have some projectile speed on gear, then this gets a lot better, but usually you won't have that much, so keep that in mind. If you're playing something else, maybe the Pierce is helpful. For gas arrow, it doesn't really do anything. After that, we're going to go up top to the Herald nodes. Now, at this point, you should have a Herald of Ash, and maybe also some of the other ones. If you already transitioned into Crossbow, it is important that you have both Herald of Ash and also Herald of Lightning, so you get both the lightning damage part and the fire damage part. Coming Calamity is not just for Heralds, it's for everything while the Heralds are active. Now, since this build is about Explosive Arrow, you can see wherever this tree goes afterwards, right? It gets you right through the campaign. And that's all fair and dandy, but I will talk now about the crossbow transition. Now, when can you transition to crossbows? 3 things have to be true. You have to have a good weapon, more on that in a second, what that means. A 3 Dragon Mask, which is the unique that everything is based around. If you don't know what this is about, check out my build guide. I will link it down below in the description. And then the third thing is a decent amount of gold, because you need to respec out of those bow nodes and into crossbow nodes. Now, currently, the amount of gold you need is a little bit steep. If it's your first playthrough and you didn't really respec much, you're probably going to have it. But do note that there is an upcoming patch where they halve the gold cost. So I hope it's out in the next few days, but that is going to make the transition a lot easier, just so you know. Now, at this point, I am level 83 and I have 2 crossbows. I'm doing a weapon swap setup. Complicated, don't need to know right now. This is my main crossbow. It has a ton of flat physical damage and a little bit of lightning damage sprinkled in there. Optimally, it would also have at flat physical damage instead of the lightning damage, but I'm not made of money, unfortunately, right now. So this is what I have. Now, this one is level requirement 67. Before that, I had one with level requirement 45 and one with 55 that I kind of transitioned into to make the leveling experience easier. However, if this is your first character and you probably got a few exalts from your campaign, that is not something you can do. So I'll show you how to find a good weapon. But you should adhere to this level requirement. Don't say, oh, I can go with this build at level 45. I'm just going to throw a shitty crossbow on. You're going to have a bad time and you're not going to experience what I'm going to experience and a lot of other people are going to experience. Wait for whenever you can use your good weapon. And sure, I would say get one that's lower level requirement and then later transition to a higher one, but that's just not how it works. You have to sometimes just go for what you get. Now, in order to find a good crossbow, you have to understand how weapons work. Basically, all your damage comes from your crossbow. All of it, everything, even the heralds scale off of your weapon damage. This is what gets multiplied by everything, right? Your attack speed, everything gets multiplied from the number up top, from this physical damage. Physical damage is premium because we're using 2 different skills that have conversion. It is very important to have a lot of physical damage. And then if you have a little bit of lightning damage, cold damage, fire damage, it's better than nothing, but fizz damage is preferable. Now, first what you do is to go to Path of Exile 2 trade. Crossbow right here, item category. Now, there are equipment filters that have damage, physical damage, crit chance. You don't really have to think about this all that much. This number right here is what we're interested in. I'll give you a few tricks how to get good ones. Now, what would I regard as a good physical damage for a starting crossbow? Probably around about 300, right? And if you look at 300, you can see 1 exalt. What very often happens is you can see that these have like still mods open, so you can still slam with exalt. Now, if I'm really being honest, 350 would be quite nice, and it doesn't usually cost you that much, but you will see it kind of creeping up to 2-3 exalts. These are quite easy to roll. If we go up to 400, you can see the price increasing accordingly. Now, here we are at 10 exalts. this will really help you. Like the higher you can go, the more investment you have. You should put everything in your weapon at first, because that means you clear faster and that means you can have a good time. Now, you can get quite a few steals here though, because people don't know how to price their stuff. So let's, for example, go to 300 DPS back there. All right, we're searching. This first guy right here, 319 PDPS. So you might be thinking, oh, that's not that good. But if you know how weapons work, you know that runes are a big deal right here. Runes give you 20% increased physical damage. That is base to the weapon that everything gets multiplied off of. Very strong. And also, a weapon can have quality, which gives you 20% more damage. So, if you look at this, he has no quality and no runes. So if you bought this one, put on runes, and then also put on quality. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to flip here. But you would get to around about 400 DPS. So for this one Exalt, you would get something that would usually cost you 10. These are things you have to look out for. If you see no runes and it still has around about 300-ish, go for it. Now, let's say you acquired that crossbow, put in these iron runes. You should have found some of them. Don't just put garbage in, only go for iron runes. Once again, if you find some with physical damage and a little bit of LE damage, that's also nice on top. It's not like bad. It adds on top, it's just not as good as physical damage. Now for quality, what you need is blacksmith whetstones. You might not have enough to actually level it up to full, but these are the ones. You can go over to Alva or whatever you're at right now and go to currency exchange. You can also do this in Act 4 Cruel from, I don't know how he's called, whatever, one of the dudes. You can basically go to, what is it called again? Currency exchange, yep. Then you type in here, blacksmith whetstones, boom. You go to exalts, and you can get, for one Exalt, you can get 9 of these. And that's probably going to get you full on quality or close to it. So it's usually worth investing in one Exalt. So that's your biggest thing out of the way, the crossbow. In terms of free dragons, you can get whatever you want. But do remember that the higher LE res you get, the easier it is going to be to cap later. And even early, just getting up to 20%. Because the roll starts at 10 and goes up to 20. That is actually quite a big deal. In terms of runes, you can put in whatever. But just remember, you can't take it out anymore. This one was corrupted. I already bought it like this one. But yeah, there's not much more to it. Don't forget to quality like this guy, whoever corrupted this. Now that's cool and all, but pal, how can I get from my bow skill to your crossbow setup? Well, I'll show you right here. So this is what you roundabout will have on the bow skill. It depends on when you're trying to transition, whenever you get your crossbow. But here's how it would look like on crossbow. You can see that this right section is fully respec and a few nodes in between. And I basically invest everything into reload speed. Honestly, this will make your build feel a ton better, and it's just great. You will see that now in your pathing, you have a lot more jewels, and we're going to talk about that in a second, how to fill these. I'll also give you a little bit of trading advice there. But yeah, you want full salvo, you want reusable ammunition, and you want instant reload. On the way there, you're also going to get the penetration, and you're going to get emboldened avatar. A little bit of exploit, but that is basically how it's going to look like. Now, I will not link this down in the description simply because this is a little bit of a weird process that completely depends on what you have. So I can just give you this advice right here, and you kind of have to go off of that, unfortunately, right? There is not like, ooh, get this exactly at 45 or something. So you kind of have to adapt a little bit. Just really quick, something I forgot to mention, attribute pressure is real with most builds, but especially this one, because you have to have both dexterity and strength for crossbows, and you're coming from this area right here where you really only get dex. So down here, once you're at the first crossbow cluster, you can also grab polymathy, and the small nodes before have +3 all attributes. So it's 5 points. It's a big investment, but if it alleviates a lot of your gear pressure, it's definitely worth. Do note though that for endgame, this is not a good solution. It is not worth 5 points. It's just something that you might have to do. So try and get that back from gear later. All right, so I was talking about jewels. So let's see what we can do. Now, there's a interesting thing here. You can do stat filter, but up top, you click here and you go count. Now, what this does is you can, for example, put minimum 2, and then whatever mods you put in here, if an item has at least 2 of those mods, doesn't matter what combination, it will search for it. I just realized I was searching on PU1 trade, so I'm just gonna quickly go here. Any jewel. All right, let's get this out of here. Now, what are we searching for? Number 1, shock duration, right? Pretty damn good. We're shock build. Chance to shock. All right. Then multiple different increased damage thingies, like for example, elemental damage, projectile damage, attack damage. I don't even know if there is attack damage on jewels, but we're just gonna throw it in there. Attack speed, right? All the good stuff. Now take the bottom one. I think the top one is the local one. You go for attack speed with crossbows. And that's going to be 4. So these have roll ranges, right? So you probably want to put something in like, I don't know, 20 maybe. I think this one was like 13, maybe like 10 here, 10 here, 10 here. Okay. And that's about it. There's a few more mods, right? Everything you can think of on the passive tree, just type it in there. Count 2, let's say. Let's search for it. Let's see what comes up. 1 Exalt, 1 Exalt, 1 Exalt. These all have 2 relevant mods. Now, obviously, you would want more. You can also experiment and put in 3, but it gets a little bit more expensive then, probably 10 plus. Yeah, 5 to 10, right? So, yeah, whatever you can afford and stick them in there. It's going to make quite a bit of a difference because if you look at this tree, once again, you will see even at level 50 to 60, you already have 1, 2, 3, 4 jewels. That can be the difference of getting another 100% increased damage, which is obviously ridiculous. One mod that I actually forgot here is the crossbow reload speed and damage with crossbows. These also count because both of you are crossbows. Especially crossbow reload speed early before you get to the clusters will give you a ton of quality of life. Now, as for leveling gear, my favorite right now for bows is actually using Widow Hail. So what Widow Hail does is it is a level 1 bow. You can put it on immediately. And it has very bad damage and whatever attack speed, right? Crit doesn't matter, but it gives you one stat here. Up to 250, I mean, corrupted even more, but up to 250% increased bonuses gained from your equipped quiver. Not only that, there's also nodes on the passive tree that go even further here. You have quiver effect up here. You can grab all of these if you're doing this setup. Now, this gets pretty crazy, but you have to realize, so all right, you're going to have a lot of damage and everything, but what do you multiply off of? This is a measly physical damage. Well, good thing that quivers have a ton of flat added damage. So for example, if I make a search with quiver, once again, I use the count up top here. Go count. I type in cold damage attacks, fire damage, lightning damage, physical damage. Those are all the ones that can appear. It can get up to 3, which would be a really good one. And you can, for example, search here. Level requirement, let's say you need an early game quiver. Let's say maximum level 5. Let's search. 8 results. You can see right here. These now add on top of your bow. But not just that, they are getting multiplied by all the quiver effect you have. Now, if you do this kind of leveling, you will have to be somebody special like me who likes to have it very easy, but who's also willing to prepare a few items. So for example, you would have a requirement level 5, then at level 20 you swap to the next one, at level 30 you swap, and so on. If that is worth it for you, for comfiness, you're gonna save a lot of hours with this setup. And you also have to remember on top of that, you can also get all of this flat damage on jewelry. So for example, on your rings and on your gloves. So if you combine all of those flat damage sources and you put it on a Widow Hill, it's gonna be quite goddamn strong. Now, if you can get stuff like attack speed on top of that, for example, this guy here, the 5% turns into like 20 plus with all the quiver effect. So what I'm trying to say is Widow Hill, very strong for leveling, and it's definitely going to get you to at least 45 or 55 whenever you swap to your crossbow is. Now, you can also swap to a Death's Harp at level 28 if you want to. This gives you a whopping 4 additional projectiles, so that for gas arrow is completely outrageous. But once again, it has very bad base damage, so now you have to get it from your quiver, and from your jewelry, and from your gloves, even more so, because now you don't have the Widow Hill carrying your flat damage from your quiver. So that's also important to know. Very strong tool. I would also highly recommend to get a Fox Shade for level 1. These cost like 1 Orb of Alchemy right now, and they give you 10% increased movement speed and some dexterity to work with, which means you don't need to spec dexterity on the tree, and you can focus on int and strength. This one is incredible. I literally had this one on until like level 40 or 50. It doesn't have much in terms of defensiveness, but 10% movement speed is ridiculous early. It just feels like cheating. Same goes for movement speed boots. I had these on until like level 40. You can also buy rare ones, but they will have a higher level requirement, most likely with 20% movement speed. These go up to 20%. And they cost, once again, around about 1 Orb of Alchemy. You can wear them starting at level 11. If you're even more peculiar, you can buy level 1 or level 2 boots and immediately go off with 10% movement speed and then swap into these. But even if you're not going to buy these items and you're just going completely Soul Saffron, if there's one stat you're looking for everywhere, it's added damage to attacks. Added damage everywhere you can. And then a semi-expensive option at the end. These cost around about 3 to 5 exalts right now. Radiant Grief. If you have these, enemies in your presence are ignited. So if you remember Gas Arrow, now you don't need to put down Flame Ball anymore. Everything just auto-ignites. It is ridiculous. So if you have that money, invest it. You can later sell it again. It's a big deal. And there's many more unique items that can help you while leveling and make it more cozier. If you have some suggestions, put it down in the comments for the boys. And yeah, this kind of rounds up the leveling section. Hope you enjoyed the video. Everything relevant will be linked down below in the descriptions. Following this, I will be making a weapon swap guide, kind of talk about why I have 2 crossbows, what the hell am I doing there, give you a little bit input on this. This is quite a scary topic, so it needs its own video, unfortunately. And after that, I'm going to be publishing the full build guide with the max roll on top. Right now, I am in tier 10 maps, so I'm not going to make an endgame guide until I actually hit tier 15s, tier 16s, so that has to go first. Unfortunately, these videos also take time away from me playing, which is unfortunate, but it's also really fun to do, so it's fine. And with that said, hope you guys enjoyed the video, whether you're playing crossbow, explosive shot or not. Maybe you learned a thing or two. And since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.